Welcome to the Jive Connects for Microsoft SharePoint video series. I'm John Underwood, Technical Evangelist for ThreeWill, and in this installment of the series we're going to look at web parts. If you've ever customized a page in SharePoint, then you're probably familiar with web parts. If not, you can think of a web part as being the SharePoint equivalent of a Jive widget. It's simply a user configurable control that can be placed on a page and then customized as the user sees fit. Web parts typically show SharePoint information, such as the contents of a list. However, the web parts I'll be showing in this video are enabled to display information from Jive. As you'll see, these can be very useful to users that spend most of their time in SharePoint, but need to be aware of activity that is going on in Jive. The web parts I'll be presenting fall into two general categories. The first displays information from Jive, and the other displays navigation links that make it easy for a user to travel from SharePoint back into a particular place in Jive. Also note that there is a web part related to the showing of search results. However, I'll be demonstrating that one in a later video. So let's have a demonstration now and see how these work. To begin the demonstration, I'll navigate to the Site Pages library. And then from there, I'll add a new page. And I'll name the page Jive Web Parts. Now this is just like any other content page you would create in SharePoint. So if I wanted, I could put markup directly on the page. I could also add any of the SharePoint related web parts that I'd like. But for this example, we're going to focus just on the Jive Web Parts. Now I'll start by changing the text layout to one column with sidebar, and that'll highlight some of the formatting of the web parts. Then from there, I'll go to the Insert tab and choose Web Parts. Notice when I highlight the Jive category, we see all of the web parts that are related to Jive. So let me focus first on a couple of web parts that have to do with navigation. I'll start by selecting the Freedom web part and placing it in the rightmost column. And then just below that, I'll add the Places web part. Now, as you'll see more fully when I save the page, both of these web parts are about navigation. These are particularly useful in a case where a user may spend a fair amount of time in SharePoint, but they need to be able to easily navigate back into Jive in order to carry out an action. Now, two other web parts that I'd like to show you. The next one that I'm going to show is Recent Content, and I'll add it to the wider portion of the page. Notice in the case of this web part, it needs to know what Jive place it should watch in order to show the recent content. So I'll go in and use the familiar model. If you've used SharePoint web parts, you've seen this before, of editing the properties for a web part. And then I'll go over and browse and select the Jive place that I want. In this case, I'm just going to use the Acme Global space. Once I've done that, I'll click OK to commit my changes. And then you can see a couple of example items that I've added to my Jive place. Now, the last item that I want to add here is the Watch a Tag web part. And I'll also put it in the wide section of the page. Now, in the case of Watch a Tag, it's also going to require me to edit a property. So I'll choose Edit Web Part. And in this case, I have to specify the tag or tags that I'm interested in. In this case, I want to watch for a marketing tag. So I'll simply enter that. And then once I've entered the tag, I'll go ahead and click OK. And then save my changes to the page. And now you can see the information that's presented by the page. The Freedom web part gives me a convenient way to create things. I can start a discussion, I can do all these different things, and in each case it's simply going to prompt me for where I want to go in Jive and then allow me to add it. So let's do the Start a Discussion. And you can see now it's prompting me for the location. Very important to note that SharePoint's not really doing anything here. Jive's doing all the work, and SharePoint is just simply providing a convenient link to get us there. Now, if I navigate back to my web part page, you'll see similar functionality in the Places web part. I can go down and browse for particular spaces, projects, groups, etc., and then navigate easily to those. Now, the other two web parts that I provided, the Recent Content and the Watch a Tag, are both about showing me content. Notice that I have a link to the original document. I also have a link to the place where it's located and some information about the author. And notice if I float my mouse over the author, I actually see some information about that author, including their rating and so on. I even have the option to follow that user if I'd like. So as you can see, using the Jive-related web parts inside of SharePoint, it's all about allowing users to work in SharePoint, but to continue to monitor and be in touch with things that are going on in Jive, as well as giving those users a very easy way to navigate to Jive and carry out certain tasks.